Good morning. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined as always by Manchester United legend Paul Parker to talk over another great week at Manchester United. If you're watching the video, please like and subscribe. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to get your questions and comments in. If you're watching the replay, please do say hello and feel free to comment. We do reply to comments after the event. And if you're listening back on the audio podcast, be sure to give us a review on the platform you're listening on and also subscribe on that platform as well. Paul, a very busy week at United. Today we'll talk about Leicester, Arsenal, the transfer window, all of that good stuff. I guess the best place to start, just to summarise, is the win at Leicester. Leicester obviously in a difficult moment. United, you couldn't say that they were controlling the game in any great shakes, but they scored a very nice goal to win the game, and they weren't really put under any great pressure. There was a chance near the end where Leicester might have scored, but they screwed it away. What did you make of that, United dealing with Leicester in a professional way?
Given how Leicester have been so far this season, it was important, or I should say imperative, that United come away with 3 points, because Leicester have been poor from day one. They just haven't really looked like they was going to win a game. And after watching them yesterday and their performance yesterday, you can see there's big problems in there. There's a lot of head down. You sort of the flare up between the goalkeeper and then Diddy. There's no trust or belief in the goalkeeper. The way Kasper Schmeichel left the club tells you there's financial issues going on there. The club is having a bad time, and at this moment, the way they are, you can only see it going in one direction, because you wonder what kind of players they can attract there in a given moment. Because I think agents and that are quite clever. Agents will look at the situation and think to themselves, we're not going to get paid what we should do here because there's no money. And the fact of the manager, you listen to Brendan Rodgers, I can't remember these, he said 3 points in his post-match, and it's 3 points were negative towards individuals, the team, the club.
Yeah.
So United went into that game against Leicester knowing that it hasn't always been the best place, has it? Really, of recent seasons. I remember them going there first game of the season and being beaten there, if I remember rightly. I think was it? I don't know if that was the season after or during when Leicester won the league. I can't really remember. I can remember quite an early season game, but. So it's always going to be mentally a little bit difficult, and I'm sure there's a few United fans who are a little bit sceptical, worried about it, but they've done enough. They've done enough to get by, and in games like that, when you are Manchester United, you're not always going to be able to play well. Teams are going to make it difficult, and situations are going to arise, but they've done enough to get the win. It won't go down as a fantastic performance, but it will go down, given the current climate at Manchester United, as a great win and an important win against a side that are sitting bottom of the Premier League.
Yeah, it was scene setting, really. You've always talked about that, the value of momentum moving forward, picking up the points and picking up the performances. I did have to graft a little bit for it. Leicester probably more up for in terms of concentration than they certainly were against Brighton yesterday. You're still going to get that United, and so the United players at the moment are raising. Not raising the game, they're raising the level to match the level of the teams that they're coming up against. Ben comments, he says, good morning both. Why does it always feel so good to beat Arsenal? Well, we'll get on to that. Before we talk about the team performance, Paul, we've got to talk about Antony. As we were talking about last week, he did indeed sign for the club, given the number 21 shirt, which I think is a good political move. People will think he's going to get the number 11 shirt. We won't mention those incidents on this podcast, but either way, Antony, he's given the start, which is a bit of a brave decision from Tenau, considering the way that he's integrated some of the other players into the team. He's not always done that, throwing them straight into action, especially in a big game. Some numbers: he's the 100th Brazilian to play in the Premier League. He's the 10th to play for Manchester United. He's the first United Brazilian to score on the debut and the youngest Premier League Brazilian to do so as well. It's a mixed debut, really. I think he impressed Paul. There were a couple of moments on the ball where he tried something. I think he realised that the defenders he's going to come up against in the Premier League are a little bit better than they are in Holland. But then you also saw the other side of his game, which not a lot of people have given credit to. That he works back and supports the fullback. Maybe 4 or 5 occasions, he really helped Dalot out in difficult moments. And then, of course, there was the way that he took the goal. Then replaced on the hour mark or so for Ronaldo. What did you make of Antony's debut?
I think you used the word at the start of it when you said mixed. The goal
Yeah.
made a difference. The goal has kind of put overshadowed some the performance. It was a bit bitty. I think this what he tried to do, the tricks and that were over exaggerated, weren't necessary. And like I think he will suddenly understand and himself be told that he doesn't have to do all that. It's not that kind of league, and defending is a bit better than what it is in the Dutch league. There's a little bit more about the defending here than what there is over there. So he's going to have to change his game slightly. And I always just think about of Ronaldo from when he arrived and how he was as a player and how he had to develop and how it virtually had to be, verbally taken away from him. Some of the things that he thought he could do. And sometimes you don't need all those tricks. You just have to play more with your head and just, use a little bit of common sense about beating people. I think he'll learn to run without the ball rather than always looking to run with the ball all the time. I've seen it has been mentioned a few times that all the other players have had to wait at least a game before they got played. I think he was in a no-win position. He brought Antony in, and when you look across the 3 players who play wide for Manchester United, he could have left either one, any one of the 3 out, and he decided to leave out Elanga, which I think in a certain way he was right. But it could have been Sancho because of what he's put in of late. There hasn't been much to talk about. Nothing of any note of anything he's done except he scored 2 goals, 2 quite important goals, but the rest of his game has been very poor, lacklustre. So he's decided to put him out there. And I understand it a certain way because it lifted the fans, it added something to it. On the back of everything, having having a bit of a good time after the start, and to get him out, it lifted the fans to see him out there to be starting, and he took him off at the right time. So I think he was maybe emotionally, maybe a little burnt out because that kind of atmosphere. The only time he mostly feels anything close to that maybe is a game against PSV or against Feyenoord when it comes close to that. But I don't think the numbers are the same as what it is there.
Yeah.
So he did, that come out right in the end. Why he went and done that and tried to get, I think he brought on Fred, didn't he? Fred come on for him.
Ronaldo
come on. Fred come on after.
Yeah.
But Ronaldo comes on, so it allows him. And what it does then, it puts Rashford back somewhere where he's 100% more comfortable because he's, doesn't know how to play centre forward. To be perfectly honest, Marcus Rashford.
Although we'll talk about the goal in a moment because I do want to mention that. But before we move on to Rashford, just a note on, first of all, Antony tracking back and helping Dalot out, and secondly, the way that he took the goal was very smart, wasn't it?
Yeah, he opened his body up, and he made it so difficult for the goalkeeper because the first thought in the goalkeeper's head is he's going to think about his left hand side.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. And when he opened his body up, he had to really think about it. And someone chatted to me this morning when I was in the gym about it, and they talked about David De Gea doesn't get any credit at all from anybody. All people can do is always be negative about him. But how many times do we see David De Gea in that situation, 1 against 1, and how many times he makes saves in that situation, as he did, we saw, didn't he, that 1 against 1?
Yeah.
And he made it in the second half, but there's not many keepers who can do that. And by the way he shaped his body, Antony, the goalkeeper didn't know which way to go. And it's the fact that he's such a confident, he plays with so much confidence. Inside, he could be a scared little boy. But the outside of him, it looks like he's got the confidence of someone who's played 600 games and scored 500 goals.
Yeah.
Just by his whole presence and the way he lauded the situation of playing at Old Trafford. You wouldn't have thought that was his first game. You
No.
know, if I used the word timid, I think I'd be a million miles away, wouldn't I? Because that wasn't a timid performance by him out there when he come out. He made a point, and he's put himself in a position now where the fans have taken to him because he's come out, he's expressed himself, and he's showing a kind of arrogance which I think in certain ways needed at Old Trafford, an arrogance that he believes in his own ability.
Yeah, no, for sure. There was that. I mean, there is a little bit of over exuberance. So you think, oh, he's just overdone that a little bit. But, like you said earlier, like Ronaldo, he'll get ironed out of his game as we go along. And I was very impressed with his work rate. I think, sometimes you get players like that who can be too much of a show pony that they're not going to do the hard yards, but he was certainly doing that. And the greater that he gets integrated into the team, the more that the fact is that he's already well aware of the way that Ten Hag wants things to be done. So he's well aware of the roles and responsibilities that he'll have in that system. So all these kind of things stand in good stead. And the fact, like you said, he took to the stage very well. A quick word on Rashford. It's funny because you mentioned that, and I tend to agree, really, he's not a natural number 9. But do you not think, and the goal, both of the goals really, but particularly the first one and the goal he scored against Liverpool, because it was almost identical, that when it's a little bit of the Rooney conundrum, and we'll talk about the performance, the general team performance in a moment, but on Rashford in particular, he seems to have a greater chance of scoring when he doesn't have time to really think about it. Do you know what I mean? Although, like you said, not maybe a natural striker, but if you give him less time, he's generally more deadly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players like that who just don't need that little bit more time. You see all the people who just do things just instinctively, and it goes from, it does go from, and I think Rashford is definitely one of those players who doesn't need more than 2 touches, to be honest. And that's why I keep saying that his great strength is to run onto things.
Yeah.
You saw one time in the first half, he's tried to dribble through 3 people. If it comes off, everyone goes fantastic. If it doesn't, he looks a dodo, as in it didn't come off because you need that little bit of luck trying to dribble through 3 people and trying to worry about one either side, one in front. And they're the little problems he puts them in. I just think something go back to basics and go what got you where you were, and that was to making runs off it. And I think from coming from a left-hand side, it's just, he keeps coming short. He's got to run behind. He's got to. And defenders will be the moment he does that once or twice. If I was playing fullback and I had someone who kept wanted every time he kept going short to go long, what happens is my starting position will be further back. I say you can run to me because it's easier that way because it's amazing how more tired you get running back towards your own goal. Mentally, you just can't do it. Everything's hard work. It's like going from treacle to a firm surface. That's what it's like. So I just think, I don't know, I can't tell Ten Hag his job, but I'm sure he knows that Marcus Rashford is at his best when he can get in behind people where he can cross it or where he can maybe get a shot off, that way, playing 1, 2, maybe 3 maximum. To come short and but try and be too intricate isn't his game, and that's why he has to start in a wide position, not through the middle. He was confused, and it affected him. It's amazing how many times Fernandes then, once he started in the wide position, Fernandes was trying to find him more because it was easy because he was going from wide to in rather than being through the middle where he's easily seen. Saying that not by the Arsenal defence. I mean, we found out in the second half, 2 centre halves with no legs. They couldn't deal with the ball in behind them. Yet United never really done that. Where over the years, that's where it's always been to create the space. You take people along to leave the space in the middle to play football. It's that simple, really. But it's amazing what you understand as you get older. But while you're playing the game, you don't fathom it. You don't work it out. That whatever's going well, you seem to want to go and try something different. And Marcus Rashford does try difficult things, while the simple things that made his name, he doesn't seem to want to do anymore.
Yeah. But having said that, if the pennies dropped, which it seems like it may have done, then United are going to benefit from that because he started the season really well. He started the season really well in terms of contribution. There's still obviously ironing out in his form, his general form on the ball. There have been a couple of good moments in there, which you really could say about the United team in general. So let's talk about the team performance. We were talking, last week about this. How United have been improving, but the Arsenal game is going to be the first big test. And really, you've got to say that it was more of the same. That Arsenal obviously had a lot of the ball, as we expected that they were going to do. Basically like a Man City reserve side, so they're going to play like that. They keep the ball, try and fashion openings in that way, and then United were going to try and hit them on the counter attack, which was effectively the game plan. It worked. All 3 goals just about on the counter. The first one you might argue not so much, but certainly the second 2 were. It was an interesting game, Paul. I mean, I think Arsenal played really well. I think they're probably a little bit optimistic when they said that they were dominating and that they deserve something from the game, because, I mean, you can't really argue. They were poor defensively and we cut them apart 3 times. I don't think it was one of those games where you can really argue about the result. I will say at 1-1, when they equalised and Saka scored, I thought, all right, they'll probably go on to win this, but we're going to find out a lot about United's character. You know what I mean? In this 30-minute spell, you're going to find out a lot about United. If they're going to fall down and crumble, which they might have done in previous months, or they'll step up. I'm not saying that, United didn't deserve to win again. I think that they did deserve, because they scored 3 goals and Arsenal, only scored 1. That's how football games are decided, effectively. What I'm trying to do is give Arsenal the fair credit by also sort of taking back the idea that they deserve to win the game, as a lot of people seem to think that they do, which is dominating and holding onto the ball and doing nothing with it, as we saw with the Van Gaal era. We saw that all too much. I thought defensively we were okay. Jesus was good, Odegaard was good, but defensively, Malacia struggled a little bit, but then he really came back and played really well. And Eriksen, fantastic in midfield. Bruno, not as wasteful as Noah. I didn't think he had a great game, but it was a great ball for Rashford. And McTominay, I thought was good again. What did you make of the general performance?
I was concerned. That's the first time the back 4 had been tested. Really, they couldn't deal with Jesus. Couldn't deal with him. He was too clever for Varane. Varane, I was surprised, tried to fight fire with fire, because he's a strong boy. Jesus, he's willing to stand up there and have his body. He doesn't want to fall over easy. He was showing, and Varane, which I'm very surprised, tried to compete that way rather than play with a little bit of guile and let him have his first touch and force him to go backwards. And all he done every time was allowed him to kind of turn and earn free kicks in that first half. He didn't really get it right. I think the first challenge, Martinez, that first challenge he done on Jesus on the byline, was just, that was just a moment of madness. And people say, oh, he's early, didn't deserve to, but that was definitely should have been a yellow card for what he done now, because it was totally out of control what he's done. He was in control as that ball bounced. He was goal side. The ball was there in front of him, and I'm surprised he just didn't just knock it into the stands. But he did, and he's tried to be a little bit clever. Didn't realise the pace that Jesus has got, and he's changed up another gear. Got it in front of him, and he gives away a foul so early. As an away side, that's an upper. That's a lift. The last thing you want to be doing is giving a away side, and especially an Arsenal, an opportunity. You mentioned about Malacia. He struggled initially dealing with Saka. That first time when Saka got to the byline, he couldn't deal with the pace, but he got it as it went on. He kind of clued in and suddenly realised what I always say about defending, and in today's world as well, you don't have to make a tackle for it to be good defending. Just force people back, and you suddenly realise with Saka's that you stand him still, then you've won. And all he's going to do is pass sideways or backwards. If you dive in, or you show him the line, as what Malacia done, and Malacia for everything he hasn't got quick feet, the early quick feet. Over a distance, maybe he'll get quicker, but over the quick 3, 4, 5 yards, he hasn't, because he's got quite a long stride pattern. So it takes him while Saka, who again isn't one of the sharpest, beat him with ease to get to that byline to put the ball across. So they're little things that they might have learnt. Dallo didn't really have the same problems initially, but he was up a good player in Martinelli. But he sorted that problem out a lot earlier than what Malacia did. So the back four got tested. There's harder tests to come as well. As well as Arsenal have done, and I live in an area dominated by West Ham. And secondly, Tottenham fans and Arsenal may argue which second team is best supported around the area I live in. But I look and a lot of Arsenal fans have enjoying the moment where they are, but have kind of still got their doubts about Arsenal for this season. I personally believe, Wayne, they're a team, they've only improved because of the signing of one player. You take that one player away and you're still seeing the same Arsenal. And that was noticeable yesterday. Jesus was in how deep he dropped to get things going. And also, then you look round, then he's in the front line. You think to yourself, they need to keep him fit for 38 Premier League games, and him play. Otherwise, they've got problems, and then they're going to say, "Oh, but we might stand a chance of winning the Europa League, so we want him for that as well." But he's integral of everything that Arsenal need to be doing this season. And as we know, players don't play 38 games anymore, not because they don't want to, as that managers generally don't want them to. So I really don't know how they're going to survive without him playing up front, if and when it does happen.
Yeah, a difficult one for the midfield as well. I said difficult. I still think McTominay played well. I think Eriksen played all right. And like I said, I already mentioned about Fernandes earlier. Ben says he agrees with me earlier that the momentum felt like it shifted after half time. It would be one-way traffic after they scored the equaliser, but the goals changed the game. Cliche came through for us. It certainly did. One thing is for real, Paul. The defence sort of did settle back. It wasn't flawless. They settled into some kind of rhythm and they held out. They did a fairly good job in the end. It's not, they're not going to keep clean sheets every game. Arsenal's attack did play well, so you've got to credit the United defence for how they responded. In the midfield, we didn't control anything. I'm not saying that critical of the midfield. Arsenal's midfield was better than ours on the day. They played better. They controlled the ball. They controlled the possession. That much is evident in the possession stats. But McTominay did play well. I still felt the midfielders played well. They just played a different game. But you would have thought that the signing of Casemiro was to negate this kind of strength, right? To negate the problem that you. And I understand why he didn't start yesterday. I called it earlier on. I thought, it's a gradual integration for Casemiro, especially in a game like that. If you're putting him in and expecting him to dominate from the start, you might have more problems than benefits, considering that they're still learning that way of playing. So the horses for courses analogy, I guess, works out. United in the game. Are you surprised that Casemiro didn't come on earlier than what he did, or do you think that the result sort of justifies what Ten Hag was doing with the midfield?
I think you saw what happened with his first, the first time the ball's given to him. Eriksen gave him the ball and he got caught out. He got taken off of his toe. He hadn't got into it. And I just think where he is, he's a starter. He's not a sub. He needs to kind of try and build a game around him. And I just think he's got to be given the opportunity to get into that midfield and try and help United, which will be a big strength that puts them on par with the teams that compete in the Premier League. Ball retention, if he's in there and he gets everything going, he gets that movement going in that way. I mean, that's what I believe. He's got to start with him now. He's got to give him a start. He might do that on Thursday. He might decide to do that where it's Real Sociedad. It's a Spanish team. He's played against them countless times. It makes sense for him to do it. I just wonder. I look at it and he might be looking at Scott McTominay and saying, "Look, he doesn't want to interact with the boys come through." He did all right, but I still think the team can be improved. Yeah. It's been this way before. When everyone goes, a lot of people, "Oh, he's done well," but when it matters, you need that bit more. Same as anything. You can always look at things and you look, how can you really improve it? And now there's someone on the bench who you brought in who can improve it, because everything that he looks in his logbook says he can improve it. So he's got to get. I think he has to give it a try. He's got to do it.
Yeah, you would have thought he'll probably get like an hour against Sociedad and then he'll start against Palace. You would have thought that that's going to be the way that works. Ben says, that's why I'm interested to see how the squad players perform. Paul, playing the same 11-15 isn't sustainable for us. Yeah, I agree with that, Ben. I do say that I think that Ten Hag's, since the first couple of games, the way that he's used the squad, I think, has been sensible. Even, I mean, we talked about humble pie a couple of weeks ago, Paul, and I don't think we're both quite there with McTominay, but we're both ready. We're both giving him plenty of praise for his improvement over the last few weeks. And I think the one thing that you've seen from him is that if he can keep up this same level of concentration and commitment and level of consistency, then even if he's a substitute player, if he's a rotational player, then at least he's got a role to play, and he can play in he can play in a win at Leicester, he can play in a win at home to Arsenal. So there's not a situation in there that maybe the bigger games will be too big for him, but he's still got a role to play, and fair enough to him for that. So it will be interesting to see. We'll talk about the Sociedad and Palace games in a moment. I want to talk to you about Ronaldo. He's staying at United. Very, very interesting. And I don't want to make this, like when Pogba was here, it was like all we did every week. You had like a 10-minute section talking about Paul Pogba, even if he wasn't playing. I don't want that to be the case with Ronaldo, but with the transfer deadline shut and the idea that he was going to go beforehand and now he's staying. And it's also now tied into the long-term picture because obviously, where's he going to go? What's going to happen in the summer? United have got the option for a third year on the contract. They're the ones with the opportunity to extend it, I think. I don't think the option's on the player's side. But you might end up with a situation where Ronaldo's grateful for that because nobody else was obviously willing to take the stand on him. They wouldn't have even taken him on a free. I think United were quite willing to let him go if they could find a suitor to take the wages off the books. They're not there. And I think now Ronaldo's probably going to be, if he's got good advisors, and he's probably got very good advisors, considering the path his career's taken, he's going to be looking at his legacy. If he leaves United, he's not going to be in a situation next summer where all these clubs will suddenly be in for him. There's going to be an even smaller pool. So United is going to be his last sort of foray at the top in terms of the spotlight. He might go to Lisbon, he might go to the MLS, but the spotlight will never be as strong on him. So the idea is he either adapts or he takes that drop. I guess the question, Paul, is can he adapt? Yesterday, there were a couple of moments where he seemed to be doing well in Ten Hag's system. He pressed, he did the pressing, he forced a couple of mistakes, he forced one good chance that Fred might have done better with. He created one opportunity, I think, and he almost got on the end of it. I think Fred's pass had been better, he might have been on that as well. He was a bit more, like Ronaldo playing for the team yesterday, which, and against Leicester, to be fair, once he realised that his move wasn't going to happen, they seemed to be a little bit more of a team player within that considerable ego of his. Can United, the big question is, can Ronaldo be a positive influence on this team for the season?
I think it's going to be like a yo-yo, really, in that situation. Because if he comes off the bench and he goes and scores a goal, and inside of him he's going to believe that he's done something to prove a point. There's going to be a lot of fans if he scores who are going to push it out there as well for him. It's a hell of a position for him to be in, the manager. Maybe he just wishes that it was just 3 subs again or 5 subs, and he didn't have so many on the bench, and it might make it easier to maybe the players. But because he could have so many, it's impossible to leave him out. So while he sits on that bench, it's always difficult. And every time you watch the game, and you've done that as well, when you sit and you watch United play, the camera, the number 1 camera, which is the one that sits on the halfway line, it's just virtually just, he must be told by the director in his ear, every time United score or concede, go to the bench. See the reaction, look for it. That's all they want to do every time. It's like, what's Ronaldo going to do? And it's like virtually, Ronaldo's happy. Everyone's happy. And all of a sudden, Ronaldo's unhappy. Look, he looks like it's a storm brewing in his head. And all of a sudden, you wait for him and he goes, that's going to cause waves. And then straight away, There's people writing little stories already just in case United don't win to push to that narrative of Ronaldo. So it's a terrible position for him to be in this moment in time. So all he can really hope is that the team keep giving him performances, and then he can use Ronaldo as sparsely as possible, and that's what's allowing him to do so at the moment. But that's going to change because this ain't going to carry on. There's going to be a point where things aren't going right, and then people are going to be screaming if United aren't scoring. The thing about it though is I'm looking at it. This was made. This whole situation, what's going on with Ten Hag coming, for Martial to go and grab the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden, I'm reading he's got an Achilles tendon issue. I don't know how bad it is or whatever, and what's the pain levels or how they work it now. Is it a blood test told them that he's got a problem, or is the player is in absolute pain and agony that he can't move? But when I was playing and players just after me, for a situation like this, they would, to try and prove a point, they would have a go. If there's an opportunity for them to go and grab it, to play in a forward position, centre forward, in the new manager's team, you'd always wanted to be there. That's what you wanted to do, and I really don't know if he's trying to grab it or he's maybe not fussed. But there is something for the Ten Hag would just love if he was fit. That would make things. He's got someone who can maybe go and play in that role in the middle. Someone who can play with his back and play people in and around and can turn and pin defenders down by running at them very, very quickly. So that area is missing. Sometimes you can see that is missing. You watch in that first half, it was laboured. They had a lot of possession, didn't they, if you remember, Wayne United in that first half. But they weren't going anywhere. There was nothing through the middle to play through. Because Marcus Rashford doesn't know the role of playing with his back to goal through the middle. So he didn't know really what to do. And so it's very, very difficult. And a centre forward is something that was needed during that window of opportunity.
Do you think, taking that into consideration, just to close on the transfer window, because obviously it has just finished, do you think that United did as well as they could have done in the players that they did bring in? You're not going to solve every problem, and obviously the ones that you didn't solve are going to stick out like sore thumbs moving forward. But in terms of what they did address, do you think that they did as well as one could hope they would do in one window?
At this moment in time, you have to say yes, because you look at all the purchases that he brought in, every single one of them has done himself justice so far. You're waiting for Casemiro to be given the opportunity to go and do something, and you think, right, okay, yes. So you think, so that's great. The next stage for him is it's going to come. There's games that are going to come up where he's going to leave. He's going to leave players out. He's going to have to go back to the players who were playing before, and that's the bit where you'll find out where. And I think a lot of the fans are waiting to see that as well, how those players respond to it, to what's gone on, and then we find out the ones who have been living a lie over these last few seasons, really. And that's going to find out how they apply themselves. Are they going to really go at it? And then we can go, you haven't really been put in the last few seasons, have you? Really, you've been cheating your supporters, but more than anything, you've been cheating yourself. You've wasted a part of your career. Or they're going to come out and they're not going to be bothered because they're disgruntled, because they're being left out. They're used to the adulation that goes with coming out of that tunnel and playing, and they're just going to go through the motions. And they're the bits that I think I certainly am waiting to see those players, how they respond to it when they may be called upon in a League Cup game. But that's not till November, is it?
Or a Europa League game, as we're going to see on Thursday, you would imagine. Do you think that that's a good opportunity for? Because obviously he's kept the same side for a few games, barring like one or two changes. It's basically been the same side for like 3 or 4 games in a row. Do you expect that there'll be a few changes for the Sociedad game? I mean, you could argue both ways. First of all, yes, because it's a Europa League game. But second of all, if United win that game, it's the toughest home game. So they're really only looking at the Sociedad away game. And not putting all our eggs in, counting anything for granted, but you would imagine that the rest of the group is fairly comfortable for United. So this is going to be the toughest home game they've got. Do you still ring those changes?
I mean, it's on paper. United have never made it easy in the group stage. There's been a few embarrassing results and performances. So I don't think he's going to really want to go down that road. He's going to want to go with people who he knows are going to give him everything. He's going to want to make an impression. He's going to, want to compete in Europe. He's been to a semi-final with Ajax and should have been through to the final, except for a last-ditch goal by Lucas Moura. Otherwise, they'd have been playing in the final against Liverpool. So I think he's going to want to make a point. He isn't going to make too many changes. He's going to want to keep a backbone, a spine, whatever you want to call it. So he's going to have to be very, very careful in what he does. You've got to remember, a lot of these players haven't played at a tempo for quite a while, and it could affect a few of them. If to go straight back into a game of what it is, Real Sociedad, I don't think we can call them mugs, can we? They're going to
They've
want to
started
make
the season really well.
Yeah, so they're going to want to come to Old Trafford and make a mark as well. So it's a really tough one, and which damned if you do, you're damned if you don't in certain ways, really. But United, if he does bring his players back and they don't get a result or a performance, who are the people going to have a go at? They're going to go have a go at those players, or they're going to dig out the manager? They're going to dig the manager because he knew about his players. But then, like you're saying, that you can't keep going with these players, and I keep thinking to myself, there were squads during my time, Wayne, as you know, 15, 16 players, and there was championship. You think of the season, we could have done a domestic treble, 93, 94. And we got to the final of the League Cup. There were 6 Champions League games as well during that time. So there was a lot of football. You've got to remember, football, the ball was in play a lot more during that time as well. Fouls weren't easy to get as what they are today. Everything was difficult. They weren't playing on carpets. The whole process has changed. So physically, the game was tougher back then. Pitches were heavier. So this whole thing about can't keep playing his players all the time. I say to you, I'm slightly diverting a little bit, but if you keep telling somebody they're not feeling well, you don't look well, suddenly they're not going to feel well, are they? Because they've got you telling them. So if you keep telling this, I'm not going to play it because you need a rest because you're looking tired, they're going to go, yeah, you're right. And that's the difference of the modern day game and the modern day football fan and the modern day player. A player doesn't have a bad game anymore. A fan will say he looked tired.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
You're going to have a big thing for Ten Hag this week. Then I didn't see it that way, but that's the benefit of having yourself on the podcast. Is you've got the likes of, you can have like a Maguire and possibly a Lindelof, possibly a Wan-Bissaka. Certainly Casemiro will want to play. Ronaldo will expect to start, but you're exactly right. It's a very curious situation for Ten Hag to be in, because what he's done so far in like keeping McTominay and Dalot in and Rashford, players who've been heavily criticised, and he's given them the chance to do well. What do you do if Maguire puts in a man of the match performance? What do you do if Shaw plays well? You've got to start rewarding these players, or do you just tell? You know what I mean? It is a very difficult catch-22. So it's going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be the situation with Shaw was that Shaw has done it, got himself, went on, was having a good run, gets injured in Europe, comes back, gets persecuted by the manager at the time. People are not happy. I wasn't happy in the way he was treated. He comes through that. Everyone pats him on the back the way he comes back, and he lets himself down. It's like that with him, and that's got so. If he was to go and play unbelievable, does everything you expect, does he earn the right to play in front of Malacca, in front of Malacia? You go to yourself, well, no. If the opportunity comes along again, and maybe Lassie gets injured and he plays 3 or 4 games, you wait and you see, what's he like over his 3 or 4 games? Has he done really well? But then you still have to go back and look at Malacia, he's number 1. He's brought him in from Feyenoord. He's seen that he's the future. He's got to look at that. But it's up to Luke Shaw to prove to the fans and to himself that he's had his blip and he plays that way. In other words, every time you get the opportunity, keep doing that. It might not work at United, but there's suitors out there who'd be willing to maybe take him on now because they believe that he's showing a passion to want to play football rather than just sit in a position and just play comfortably.
Or that he works out as a squad player at United, understands his position as a deputy to Malacia and plays capably in that role. Do you know what I mean? And you don't know with these,
Yeah,
because he's going
I
to be a
hope.
long way down, a long way
Yeah, but
down.
I mean, hopefully he's got a massive ego and he's saying, I don't want to be doing this. I've enjoyed being a number one in that position. I need to move on.
Yeah.
And if he says that, fair play to him, and I like that. To just sit around and accept that, oh, he's better than me, he's younger than me. I'm going to sit here and pick my money up. I think you've got to be better than that. You can't. You got to be.
Yeah.
That's my belief.
Well, we'll see. It's going to be a big few months for him and Maguire and a couple of other players like that. Close off, we'll talk about Palace. Palace is next Sunday, I believe. United play there. A curious start. You mentioned Shaw going up and down, but Palace are sort of very similar this season because I've seen them play a couple of times actually. They were 2-0 up at City, and before being defeated by Haaland, they got a draw at Anfield and possibly even deserved to win because they played really well. They beat Villa, but everyone's beating Villa at the moment, apart from City. Otherwise, a few draws. They've got a few draws. They drew again at the weekend. They're 15th in the table. Vieira did such a good job last time round. They're finding the feet this time, and it seems like it's a good time for United to go to Selhurst Park.
I beg to differ a little bit, to be perfectly honest. It's in the sense of United, the way they're playing, yes. But the fact of the way Palace are and, what they've done, they've dug them out and maybe, as we said, as I'm just seeing it, just going across, is the referees, whatever they call themselves, has apologised or tried to apologise for what they've done. And Newcastle goal should have stood, but they went 2-0 up against City and end up getting beat. That's fair enough. They go to Liverpool, and as you say, they get at least what they deserve, a point.
Yeah.
I just feel the way United, when they go there, it's a big game for them. Very partisan support. It's a very difficult game. So United are going there at the right time when they're in a good form, and collectively they're a unit now. Where the first two games they wasn't a unit; they were individuals. So this is a better time for them to be going there. But it's mostly going to be their toughest away game.
Yeah.
So far in going there. I'm hoping that I'll be at that game as well. I mean, I've been a couple of them down there and they've been really tough. I remember the late goal by Matic, late goal. I remember that game, that one night, incredible. That atmosphere was incredible, and the players know that. It's a great place. It's a good place. When it's a packed ground, the atmosphere is good. So the Palace game is very, very difficult. Palace are going to want to make a point, and many times going down there when I was playing at Selhurst Park, Palace, it was a massive occasion, and they've done everything to try and win. And and when you lose there, they let you know it as well as fans and the players as well. They enjoy that moment. So Ten Hag is going to get there, and he's going to Southampton. That's a little bit more comfortable than going to Selhurst Park.
Yeah, for sure. Funnily enough, I think the last day defeat there last season was the first time we lost to Palace. Away in the Premier League. We've had a few draws there for sure. But like I said, they're likely to make it difficult this time round. They've got a really good record of raising themselves for the bigger games, and they certainly, like I said, deserve to get something from the Liverpool game. And probably if they did, there was there something disallowed at City? They had something that should have gone their way when they were 2-0 up. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Oh, they did, yeah. It was about a throw out by Edison. There's something out from Edison, and it was trying to say the player lifted his foot. But that's another one that they didn't apologise for that, but it's another one that should have been given. If that's a goal, if that goes in and the referee blows and points to the spot and carries on, none of those City players would have complained.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have complained. They'd have been 3-0 down. I think we have to say, even Man City, that would have been game over. And just changing it again, if the referees were to look at the players' reaction, they'll gauge it better because they can't lie to players. Initially, they can't lie. Their whole reaction, like at Chelsea when I was there, Reece James with a header back, his reaction when that ball goes in was, what have I done? The only one who showed a negative reaction was a goalkeeper who went screaming and screaming like, like someone had taken away his rattle. You know, it was
Yeah.
embarrassing. It was embarrassing, but I diversed there anyway. So sorry.
No, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be just particularly with the referee, and you feel like next week there'll be a big one because there's so much criticism on it this week. So like all the scrutiny will be on the decisions, and the United are the last game of the weekend only, so they're bound to get some controversy will be coming their way for sure. We'll be back next Monday to talk about it. United, their trip to Sellers Park and the first Europa League game against Sociedad, Real Sociedad on Thursday. Until then, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please give it a like and subscribe on the video version. If you enjoyed it on the audio version, be sure to give it a review on the platform you're listening on. We'll be back next week to talk about those two games. Until then, stay safe, stay well, and thanks for listening and watching.